We've had several weeks now to let the new legendary creatures from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan cook, and as we come close to the next set's release, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at some of the better legendary creatures we did get, and decide which of them would make the best commanders. Now that Wizards has announced that they will be pulling off the gas a touch and giving us less new legendary creatures and planeswalkers per new set, we can expect to be able to better sift through these cards and find some gems. And so presented here today are my picks for the 10 best legendary creatures from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Starting off, I wanted to discuss an honorable mention. Huatli, Poet of Unity, is a 2/3 human warrior bard for 2 and a green. When she enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic land, add it to your hand. You can pay 3 generic and then 2 mana in any combination of red and white to exile her and then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control, but only at sorcery speed. Transformed, she becomes the Roar of the Fifth People, a 4-chapter saga. At the first chapter, you create 2 3/3 green dinosaurs. The second, she gains creatures you control can tap for a red, a white, or a green mana. The third, you tutor for a dinosaur to your hand. Her final chapter gives your dinosaurs both double strike and trample until the end of turn. So, dinosaur decks are very popular in Commander right now. I don't blame them. A lot of the dinosaur options do offer a lot of stuff to the strategy, and while this does take quite a bit of mana investment to get to the saga side, I think that side of the Commander does a lot for dinosaur decks. We get dinosaur tokens that are moderate size right out the gate. We then get mana ramp, which sticks around for a while, and I think that it's a very powerful ability to turn all of your dinosaurs into mana dorks as long as you have the saga in play. Then, when you finally get to search for whatever the literal best dinosaur in your deck is, that could be game ending, because the next chapter gives your entire board both double strike and trample. Those 2 keywords combined with the sheer size of dinosaurs should win you the game if you've set up properly so far. I think there's a lot that you could do for this card as a commander, even if her ETB is somewhat lukewarm. At our official number 10 spot, we have the Myco Tyrant. I love the fungi creatures we've been getting over the years, and I think the Myco Tyrant offers us a reasonably good commander for that deck. We also get some synergies with saplings, which tend to exist in some orbital space 2 fungi decks, and so having that dual creature type count can help make the Myco Tyrant pretty big. It having trample is doubly relevant as it means that a commander damage win is possible if it can grow large enough, and given that decks that utilize saplings and fungi tokens go wide, I imagine this would be a very good approach to as well. Lastly, its second ability upon the end step will create X 1/1 black fungus tokens with this creature cannot block, where X is the number of times you've descended this turn. I really enjoy the design space of Descend, as it counts each time a permanent card enters your graveyard. Obviously, this will incentivize you to keep less instants and sorceries in your deck, but many of the cards that you'll be using in those slots could quite possibly have better alternatives in permanent form that would be far more conducive to the Myco Tyrant's expectations. I do know that Josh from the Command Zone piloted this at the helm of his commander deck on the Game Nights episode from this set, and if that's any indication of what this card can do. Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance, is at our number 9 spot, being a 2/2 human artificer for a red and a blue. She has 1 ability. For 2 mana and tapping her, we create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except the token is an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, and you sacrifice it at the next end step. This is giving me Kiki Jiki vibes, and while I've never gotten the opportunity thus far to brew with it, the fact that this also lets you duplicate your non-creature artifacts makes me feel this will be especially powerful. It doesn't impact the legendary rule, so if you do copy a legendary card, you will have to sacrifice one of the 2. This could also be used to your advantage. Artifact decks are very well developed at this stage of the Commander timeline, having several core strategies that are powerful, consistent, and, well, hard to interrupt. Saheeli's design is simple, but that could be used to her advantage in building a powerful deck with her at the helm, and then keeping some tricks up your sleeve when your opponent lets their guard down. At number 8, we have Zayoa Lava Tongue, a 2/2 with Death Touch for 2 mana. At the beginning of your end step, if you've descended this turn, each opponent may discard a card or sack a permanent. He deals 3 damage to each opponent who did neither. At the time of recording, I've already covered this commander twice, which is more than I have for many other legendary creatures on this channel. His abilities are very easy to take advantage of, as I perceive him as a mix between an 8-rack strategy and a stacks deck that denies opponents of their resources. Every time I've approached building him, there's a new route to build and a new card to help increase his potency. Given the opponents, the choice is somewhat a lax approach on a stacks deck, as a proper stacks commander will simply want to impede an opponent altogether, and giving them the option of simply taking 3 points of damage is a little counterintuitive. However, I have approached him in several ways that, even if they choose an alternative, this will still impact them, doubling up on punishing cards such as Megrim or Infect. In our number 7 spot, we have the Sovereign Okanek Aho, a 3/4 cat noble for 2, a green and a white. It has Ward 2, and whenever it attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than its base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. This card is one I'm actually currently brewing, and I think a lot of people's initial reaction to this card is that it works well with cards like Giant Growth that give temporary boosts to the power, making them into permanent boosts. But I feel like this has so much more potential, especially in decks that utilize anthems and +1/+1 counters, as this ability only looks at the current power being greater than the base power. And so if the creature has already got some accumulation of +1/+1 counters onto it, this will only add to those counters, making it grow larger. When we explore this deck, you'll see that this has perhaps the best commander in green and white for +1/+1 counters. The Ancient One is at number 6, an 8/8 Spirit God for 1 black and blue. It has Descend 8, making it unable to attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. You can also pay 2, a blue and a black, to draw a card and then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, target player mills equal to that card's mana value. This has a lot of applications, and I think it can make for a very fun self-mill deck. There are a lot of cards in black and blue that take advantage of mill, even if it's on yourself, and you can even win the game if you've milled enough. It's a huge creature, being more powerful than even the Titans on Theros, and if you've built your deck properly, you can reach those 8 permanent cards very easily. We may cover this deck on the channel soon before we transition over to the Ravnica and Karlov Manor sets, and I'll show you exactly what I'm working on with this creature. Number 5 is claimed by Ojiraxanal, Deepest Might, a 4/4 god for 2 and 2 red. It has Trample, and if a red source you control would deal non-combat damage that is less than its power to an opponent, that source deals damage equal to the power instead. When it dies, it returns to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. The transformed side is Temple of Power, which is a land that taps for a red. You can also pay 3 to transform it back, but only if red sources you've controlled dealt 4 or more non-combat damage, and you can only do it at sorcery speed. This is, in my opinion, the ultimate in mono-red burn strategies in Commander. There are a lot of cards that simply ping opponents like Impact Tremors for small quantities of damage. This ramps up that damage, making even the smallest of non-combat damage far more dangerous. This can make quick work of opponents, especially given how many damage doublers and combos exist in mono-red that can impact just how much damage you're dealing to opponents. I'm a fan of the monocolored gods in this set coming back as lands that can transform back into the gods, as it does theoretically let you circumvent the commander tax in a way that doesn't feel broken. Coming up next is Ojir-Tak, Deepest Foundation, a 6/6 god for 4 and 2 white with Vigilance. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many are created instead. When it dies, it also returns to the battlefield transformed as Temple of Civilization, which taps for white, and then for 3 mana you can transform it back, but only if you attacked with 3 or more creatures, and again, sorcery speed only. Again, I'm a fan of the god cards from this set, as this one is literally a pumped up Parallel Lives. 3 times the token generation can be extremely huge, as white is home to many mass token producers. Cards like Stormherd, Martial Coup, White Sun's Twilight all exist to make a horde of creature tokens, and this will tripper whatever creature tokens we would be creating. It's a steep mana cost at 6, but if it hits the battlefield, you'll be in shape to start building up your army. Ghalta, Stampede Tyrant is in number 3 as a 12/12 for 8 mana with Trample. When it enters the battlefield, you can put any number of creatures into the battlefield from your hand. This is perhaps the ultimate Timmy card. It's a huge dinosaur with a lot of upside. It is in mono green, so you do miss out on some of the other dinosaur cards, but the ones in green are just as huge. Some of them come with tremendous upside of their own, and you can easily drop something like an Earthshaker Dreadmaw to refill the hand you just emptied out. I'm interested in which version of Ghalta you prefer, this one or the original that simply had a casting cost reduction. Sound off in the comments. At number 2, we have Amalia Benavides Aguirre, a 2/2 Vampire Scout for 2 mana, with Ward, paid 3 life. Whenever you gain life, Amalia explores, and then you destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. This card is nuts. Firstly, Amalia's power doesn't have to be made 20 by the Explore triggers alone, as just about any means of reaching that power is valid. This can be a great Voltron-style commander, as she'll be able to one-shot opponents once she hits 20, because nothing else is going to be on the field. And you can manipulate her counters with something like Throw Parasite or Proliferate to hit that 20 power over and over again. This can be at the helm of an aristocrat style deck, taking advantage of blood artist effects that also hurt opponents for creatures dying, while gaining us life back and subsequently triggering Amalia. There's a lot to be said about a vampire themed deck as well, as so many vampires these days have lifelink, making for quick work of that explore trigger. Remember, each lifelink trigger will go separately, so if you have 3 creatures with lifelink, each giving you life, that's 3 separate instances of life gain and 3 explore triggers. Maybe we should cover this on the channel. Lastly, at number 1, and perhaps the closest I think to having a competitive option on this list, what do I know what I'm talking about, is Kutzil Malamet Exemplar, a 3/3 for 3 mana. Opponents cannot cast spells during your turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than their base power deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This has an ability similar to Grand Abolisher, a classic stacks piece that I love that protects you from interaction on your turn, though this card lacks the ability to turn off anything that's already in play. It also draws you a card for each opponent that your pumped up creatures connected with, and so if you have 3 opponents, you could, in theory, draw up to 3 cards per combat phase. Given that an earlier mentioned legend does stuff with pumped up creatures, this is quite possibly the ability to band 2 together in a very powerful way to give us aggression, protection, and card advantage. What do you think? That will bring us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed our time in Ixalan together. We do have a few more projects to come out before we wrap up our explorations of Ixalan for now. What do you think of the legendary creatures in this set? Are there some legends that you want to build around or are building around? Let's brew up some fun stuff in the comments below. If there's a commander that we didn't mention that you think's pretty cool, let me hear about it. If you did enjoy this video, likes and shares are always some of the best ways to help support the channel. Subscribe if you're new here, and as always, I'll see you all next video.